Okay, the next book on our hit list is Descartes' Discourse on Method. This was considered at the time, I think, not just later, a revolutionary book, and that really was the beginning, opened the doors for a lot of stuff that followed, like the British empiricist a century later, or not even a century later in some cases, and then the reactions to those philosophers and figuring out epistemological questions about how can we be sure of what we know and what does it mean to say we know something. So what exactly is Descartes' discourse on method about? What is that method?
Well, unlike his predecessors, remember Descartes was writing in the 17th century. And so we're talking about most of the previous centuries having been the Middle Ages. And during that time, the authority of the church, the authority of the state, the authority of Aristotle, believe it or not, carried a lot of weight. And so what Descartes did that was revolutionary, and the reason his method, the reason we've chosen the discourse on method, is it's his method rather than his conclusions that are most revolutionary. But what he said was, I'm going to take a look from the beginning at my beliefs. I'm not going to accept authority. I'm not going to accept any opinion. I'm going to start from scratch. And not only that, I'm going to look at it purely as an individual. I'm going to look at it for myself, and I'm going to say, what can I really know? Relying only on myself and not on the authority of anybody else. And so that was his method. So he sat down and he said...
It's a skeptical method, it sounds like.
That's exactly what it is. And that's why he's known as the first of the modern philosophers, was he started from a point of view of skepticism. He started from the point of view of, you don't know anything until proven. So what he said was, I'm going to ask myself, what is there that I cannot doubt? And so he started off and he said, well, can I doubt the external world? Everybody accepts that the external world is out there. Mm-hmm. And he said, yeah, I can doubt that. Perhaps I'm dreaming. In another piece called Meditations on First Philosophy, he says, maybe a demon planted these ideas in my head.
I've often had that feeling.
In your case, maybe so. But in any case, we can all relate to the fact that it's sometimes very difficult to tell the difference between dreams and reality.
Certainly is.
And so he said, yes, I can doubt that. So that can't be my first principle, that there's an external world. Mm-hmm. Then he said, but the fact that I'm doubting at all establishes the fact that there's at least a me, there's an I, at least there's an I doubter, I/doubter, I qua doubter exists. Mm-hmm. Because whether I'm having a hallucination or whether I'm experiencing the external world, there's still an experiencer there. And that's me.
Yeah, and that's the rock bottom. That's the cogito.
Yes. So he said, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am.
Or in this case could be said, I doubt, therefore I am.
Exactly. Right.
Do we know that there's doubting going on? That's for sure. But where does the I come from?
Well, I think what he says is that in the statement, I doubt, mm-hmm. what's implicit is that whatever the content of that is, whatever the predicate of that is, the experience is still there. Mm-hmm. Now, he can't say anything else about that I, yet anyway. He can't say, I am a this or I am a that, but at least I am a doubter.
Mm-hmm. Well, couldn't he have made any assertion? Oh, by the way, isn't there some interesting background that in order to, he went into a sensory deprivation tank to conduct this experiment, which was a baker's oven, and somewhere in Paris. What if he had just said, smells like bread in here? He still would have been asserting a self, wouldn't he have?
Smells like bread, I'm not sure. Because,
or I smell bread.
Well, bread immediately assumes the external world. But if he were to have said something that was only about his own consciousness, yes, that would have worked as well as I doubt. If he had said, I itch.
Yeah, I don't feel so good today.
Right. That would have been just as good, as long as it didn't refer to anything outside his own consciousness.
Okay, so we've established that the method of radical doubt was a radical method, particularly historically. I mean, that was not where philosophy was coming from for millennia, literally millennia. And so he justly deserves the mantle of the father of modern philosophy. Yeah, but then doesn't he kind of go right back to the received wisdom, and he says, well, it's clear and distinct that God exists, and that it's still nice to go to the seashore, and a few other things like that. I mean, doesn't he kind of fudge at that point?
Yeah, he's more remembered today for his method and for his conclusion that he existed than he is for anything after that, because you're right, his arguments get a little less clear and distinct.
Now, why should we read Descartes, especially before Horace? That's putting Descartes before the Horace. Okay.
Awful.
Okay.
Why should we read Descartes? Well, because of what you mentioned at the outset, which is he changed the subject. Prior to Descartes, the primary questions of philosophy were metaphysical questions. What is the nature of reality? What is the nature of God? And supposedly, by reason alone, the philosopher could sit in a corner and come up with the nature of reality. Descartes changed the subject. He said, wait a minute, what are the sources of our knowledge? Where does our knowledge come from, and how can we be certain of anything? So he changed the subject from metaphysics, nature of reality, to epistemology, theories of knowledge. What are the sources of our knowledge? How can we ever attain certainty? And that's the agenda of philosophy for the next 500 years.
And up to now.
Yes.
Yeah. I say let's move on. What do you say?
Sounds good.